Have you ever seen someone treated unfairly in public? How would you react if you witnessed a moment of humiliation? Picture this: a busy parking lot, cars lined up, drivers rushing in and out. At a luxury hotel, the valet staff is on duty, greeting guests, handling vehicles with precision. Among them is one young man, an unassuming valet who has been working tirelessly to ensure smooth arrivals for high-profile guests. Little does he know that one seemingly normal day will change his life forever. Eun-Woo, the famous actor, had just arrived at the hotel, his luxurious car carefully parked by the valet staff. The valet, a young man named Jaemin, had carefully guided the actor's car to the valet area, as he did every day. Jaemin was doing his job well, polite, professional, and efficient. Yet, he wasn't prepared for the encounter that was about to unfold. A wealthy guest, dressed in an expensive suit and sporting an air of superiority, drove up to the valet stand. He looked out of his window and eyed Jaemin with disdain, as if his very presence was an inconvenience. "You parked my car in the wrong spot," the man shouted, his voice harsh and demanding. "This is unacceptable. How hard is it to do your job right?" Jaemin, trying to remain calm, approached the man's vehicle. "I apologize, sir. I'll move it immediately," he said, trying to defuse the situation. But the guest was already irate. "You should be more careful. Do you even know what you're doing?" he continued to yell, getting out of the car and pointing at Jaemin with a look of utter disdain. The valet was stunned by the man's sudden outburst, but he remained composed, knowing that it was part of his job to stay professional no matter how rude or insulting the customer was. At that moment, Eun-Woo, who had just stepped out of his own car, overheard the exchange. He paused, a little confused at first, then his expression hardened as he saw how the guest was treating the young valet. Eun-Woo had always believed in the value of kindness and respect, and witnessing this injustice made something inside him snap. He couldn't just stand by and let it happen. Without a second thought, Eun-Woo walked over to the scene. "Excuse me, sir," he said, his voice calm yet firm. "You can't talk to anyone like that. This valet is doing his job and deserves to be treated with respect, just like anyone else." The guest looked up, his expression turning from shock to irritation. "Who do you think you are, telling me how to speak to my employees?" he sneered. "I'm someone who believes that everyone deserves respect," Eun-Woo replied. "And you've just made a mistake by disrespecting him." The guest was taken aback by the confrontation. "You should mind your own business," he scoffed, turning away from Eun-Woo. But Eun-Woo wasn't done. "You should understand that the people you interact with aren't beneath you," Eun-Woo said, his tone unwavering. "No matter their job, no matter their status, everyone has dignity. You don't get to treat people like this just because you think you're better than them." Jaemin, who had been standing there, still processing the situation, couldn't believe what he was hearing. The actor, whom he had admired from a distance, was standing up for him in a way he had never expected. His heart swelled with gratitude, and for the first time, he felt a surge of confidence. No one had ever stood up for him like this. The guest, now visibly embarrassed by the scene, quickly got back into his car, muttering under his breath. Without another word, he drove off, leaving behind the tension he had caused. Jaemin stood there, in shock, trying to process what had just happened. He had been humiliated in front of others, but now, thanks to Eun-Woo's intervention, he no longer felt like the target. Eun-Woo turned to Jaemin with a reassuring smile. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Jaemin, still stunned, nodded slowly. "Yes, thank you. I didn't know what to do, but you really helped me." Eun-Woo's smile widened. "You're welcome. Nobody should be treated like that. Remember, you're doing a good job. Never let anyone make you feel less than that." The moment lingered in Jaemin's mind long after Eun-Woo had left the parking lot. What had started as an embarrassing experience had become a moment of empowerment. Thanks to the actor's words, Jaemin realized that he didn't have to tolerate disrespect. He wasn't just a valet, he was a person who deserved kindness and dignity, no matter his job. In the coming days, Jaemin started carrying himself with newfound confidence. He smiled more often, held his head high, and refused to let rude customers or difficult situations knock him down. He had learned an important lesson that day, not from a book or a seminar, but from a single act of kindness from someone who understood the importance of standing up for what was right. In the days following the incident in the parking lot, word began to spread about what had happened between Eun-Woo and the rude guest. While many guests had witnessed the confrontation, few expected it to make such a big impact. What was once a simple act of standing up for someone became a pivotal moment for many people. The #RespectEveryone movement, which had started in the hotel parking lot, was quietly gaining traction in the hearts of those who believed in dignity and mutual respect. Jaemin, the valet, found himself the center of attention at the hotel. It wasn't because of his confrontation with the rude guest, but because his courage to stand tall in the face of humiliation had inspired the staff. He had gone from being the quiet, reserved valet who would quietly take the mistreatment to someone who now held his head high, never backing down when it came to his dignity. The confidence he carried was infectious, and soon, it wasn't just Jaemin who had changed, it was the entire hotel staff. Gina, the receptionist, noticed the transformation in Jaemin as she greeted him the next morning. "Hey, you seem different today," she said with a curious smile. Jaemin smiled back, a sense of pride in his voice. "It's strange, but I don't feel afraid anymore. I've always just taken things in silence, let customers say what they want. But now I feel like I'm worth more than that." Gina's face softened as she nodded. She had been with the hotel for several years and had seen many faces come and go, but this new energy in Jaemin was inspiring. She, too, felt a renewed sense of respect for herself and others, something she had been missing for years. It wasn't just Gina and Jaemin who felt this change. Throughout the hotel, from the janitors to the managers, people began to treat one another with more patience, kindness, and respect. They started to stand up for each other, offering support in difficult situations and lifting each other's spirits during challenging times. Even guests began to notice the difference. One evening, a guest approached the front desk, clearly annoyed by a minor issue with his reservation. Gina, as always, listened carefully and offered to help resolve the issue, but the guest began to raise his voice, blaming her for a problem she hadn't caused. Before Gina could respond, she saw a familiar face standing nearby, Eun-Woo. He had just arrived for another stay at the hotel, but he wasn't just here as a guest. Seeing the situation unfold, he walked over calmly, his gaze directed at the angry guest. "Excuse me, sir," Eun-Woo said, his voice steady but firm, "I believe you may want to reconsider how you're treating my friend here. She's doing her job, and there's no reason for you to raise your voice or blame her for something that's not her fault." The guest blinked in surprise, stunned by the intervention. He looked at Eun-Woo, trying to process the situation. "Who are you to get involved in this?" he asked, clearly confused. "I'm someone who believes in respect," Eun-Woo replied simply, his tone unwavering. "I've seen firsthand how hard the staff here works, and I'm not going to let anyone treat them unfairly." The guest, now visibly embarrassed by the confrontation, looked around at the other guests who were witnessing the scene. The silence in the room made him reconsider his actions. With a frustrated sigh, he muttered an apology and turned away, retreating without another word. Gina stood there, her eyes wide with surprise and gratitude. She had never expected this kind of support. Eun-Woo's action wasn't just about standing up for her in the moment, it was a continuation of the message he had spread: respect is non-negotiable, and everyone deserves it, no matter their position. The incident didn't go unnoticed by the rest of the hotel staff, either. It was as though a spark had been ignited. Staff members who had once felt too intimidated to stand up for themselves or each other now found the courage to do so. They understood that the hotel was not just a place of work, it was a community, one where every person's voice mattered. A few days later, the hotel's management team called a meeting to discuss how they could further promote a culture of respect. They recognized that the changes in the hotel's atmosphere were not just due to the actions of one individual, but to the collective effort of the entire team. The management decided to implement new initiatives, including training sessions on how to handle difficult situations with dignity and how to address disrespect in the workplace. They also planned to introduce a reward system that acknowledged the staff's contributions, ensuring that every role, no matter how small it may seem, was recognized and valued. Eun-Woo, who had remained humble about his actions, was invited by the hotel's management to speak at the meeting. Standing before the team, he offered his thoughts. I know I didn't change everything by myself. It's not about me, he began. It's about all of you. What I did that day was simply a reminder of how powerful respect can be. It doesn't take much to make someone feel valued. It just takes a little empathy, a little kindness, and the willingness to stand up when it matters. The room was silent as everyone absorbed his words. For many, it was a turning point. They understood that the movement for respect was not just a fleeting trend, it was something that could shape the entire culture of the hotel, and potentially change the way they interacted with others beyond work. As the meeting came to a close, Gina looked at her colleagues and felt a new sense of pride. The hotel had become more than just a place where they worked, it had become a place of transformation, where each person mattered and was treated with respect. And Eun-Woo, who had simply wanted to make a difference, had sparked something far greater than he had ever imagined. The days following the meeting continued to be transformative for everyone at the hotel. The culture of respect that had begun as a ripple, a single act of standing up for a valet in the parking lot, had now spread like wildfire through the hotel staff. It was as though everyone had found their voice, and the energy in the workplace felt renewed and invigorated. Gina, once unsure and quiet, now felt empowered. She took on a new leadership role among her colleagues, helping to foster an atmosphere of respect and collaboration. Every morning, she would remind herself of the words that Eun-Woo had said: everyone has dignity. Every person deserves respect. She didn't just repeat it to herself, she lived it. And that attitude spread, becoming the foundation of the hotel's new way of doing business. As word spread within the community, guests began to comment on the positive changes they were noticing. Many mentioned how the staff seemed happier, more engaged, and more willing to help. The energy at the hotel was palpable, and it felt like the staff was working together in a way they never had before. One day, an influential travel blogger, who had stayed at the hotel in the past, returned to write a review. After checking out, the blogger left a glowing message online: "I've been to many 5-star hotels, but there's something special about this one. The staff treats you like family. I've never felt more welcomed, and it's clear that they care not just about the service but about each other." I watched a guest berate one of the valets in the parking lot, and I couldn't believe how quickly a guest stepped in to defend him. It was humbling to witness the respect this hotel fosters. This is the kind of place I'll return to, not just for the luxury, but for the heart of the people. The review spread like wildfire on social media, with people from around the world praising the hotel for its culture of respect. It wasn't just about a luxury experience anymore, it was about how guests were treated and the sense of community among the staff. Gina's confidence continued to grow, and she found herself mentoring younger staff members who looked up to her for guidance. She was no longer just the receptionist, she was a leader, a role model for others who had once felt invisible or underappreciated. One afternoon, as Gina was helping to train a new employee, a familiar face appeared in the lobby. It was Eun-Woo, who had just arrived for another stay at the hotel. Seeing him, Gina couldn't help but smile. She walked over to greet him and thanked him for everything he had done. "I can't thank you enough," she said. "You've completely changed the way I see myself and the way I approach my work." Eun-Woo smiled warmly, as he always did. "It wasn't just me, Gina. You had it in you all along. You just needed someone to remind you of your worth." Gina nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. "You gave me that reminder when I needed it most. And now, I'm passing it on to others. We're creating something special here. Something I'm proud to be a part of." Eun-Woo's expression softened, and he placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'm proud of you too. You've become a true leader here. Keep spreading the message of respect, and the world will take notice." The hotel wasn't the only place where Gina felt empowered. In her personal life, she had become more vocal about her needs and boundaries. She started saying no when she was overwhelmed, and she began setting boundaries with friends and family who hadn't always respected her time or energy. It was a small but significant shift in how she interacted with the world. Meanwhile, the #RespectEveryone movement was gaining traction outside of the hotel as well. Businesses in the area were starting to implement similar initiatives in their workplaces. Many owners and managers visited the hotel, asking for advice on how to implement their own versions of the program. Eun-Woo's message had gone far beyond a single hotel, it was spreading to entire industries, and people were starting to see the value in treating their employees and customers with dignity and respect. It wasn't just businesses that were adopting this mindset. Communities were also embracing the #RespectEveryone movement. Local schools began to hold workshops and assemblies focused on teaching students about respect and empathy. Social organizations hosted events where individuals shared their stories of standing up for themselves and others. The movement had sparked a cultural revolution of kindness and mutual respect that was being felt in homes, schools, workplaces, and beyond. Eun-Woo couldn't believe how much had changed since that moment in the parking lot. What had started as a simple act of standing up for a valet had become a global movement, one that was not only transforming workplaces but also shaping the way people interacted with each other in everyday life. And yet, as successful as the movement was, Eun-Woo knew that the work wasn't over. There was still more to be done. The world wasn't perfect, and there were still many people who felt unseen or disrespected. But with every step forward, with every story of empowerment, Eun-Woo knew they were making a difference. As he sat in his hotel room that evening, reflecting on everything that had happened, he couldn't help but smile. He had sparked a movement, but it was the people who had embraced it that made it truly powerful. People like Gina, who had gone from being humiliated to becoming a leader. People like Jaemin, who had found the courage to stand tall and demand respect. And people like the guests, who had witnessed what it meant to treat each other with dignity. Eun-Woo knew the fight for respect wasn't over. But he also knew that with each act of kindness, with each person who chose to stand up for what was right, they were creating a future where respect was not just a dream, it was a reality. As the days turned into weeks and then months, the ripple effect of the #RespectEveryone movement began to truly take hold. What had started as a single, powerful act of standing up for someone in the parking lot had spread far beyond the hotel and the entertainment industry. Eun-Woo's message was no longer limited to those who followed his work in the spotlight. It had resonated with people from all walks of life, businesses, students, workers, and everyday individuals, all coming together to spread the message of respect. The hotel, once a place of luxury where staff members worked under the pressure of constant perfection, had transformed into a model of inclusivity and kindness. Guests now felt more than just pampered, they felt respected. They were treated as equals, not because of the money they spent, but because of the human connection that was fostered throughout the space. The staff was happier, more engaged, and more committed than ever to creating a positive experience for each guest. Gina, now a senior member of the staff, continued to lead by example. She had begun speaking at local events, sharing her story with others who had faced similar mistreatment. She was invited to speak at a variety of workshops on workplace empowerment, where she encouraged employees to stand up for their rights and ask for the respect they deserved. One particular day, Gina was invited to speak at a university seminar on the importance of respect in the workplace. Standing before a room full of eager students, she recalled the moment when Eun-Woo had stood up for her. "I was just a receptionist. I thought my job didn't matter. I didn't think I mattered," she said, her voice steady. "But that moment changed everything. It showed me that I don't need to tolerate mistreatment, and that no one should. Every one of us deserves to be treated with dignity." The room was silent as the students absorbed her words. It was a powerful message, one that resonated deeply with young people who were just starting their careers. Gina was no longer just an employee, she was an ambassador for the #RespectEveryone movement, teaching others how to find the courage to speak up and stand tall. Eun-Woo, meanwhile, continued his advocacy, traveling to conferences, speaking at universities, and even collaborating with NGOs to bring the message of respect to communities around the world. He had seen how far the movement had come, but he also knew that there was still much more to be done. The world was changing, but true equality and respect would take time to fully achieve. At one of his events, Eun-Woo stood before a crowd of business leaders, social advocates, and policymakers. His keynote speech was always a call to action. Respect is not just a buzzword. It is the foundation of every thriving community. It starts with the individual and grows into something greater when we choose to stand up for one another. Respect should be the standard, not the exception. In the audience, there were many who had been inspired by his words. They knew that the responsibility was not just on Eun-Woo or those in power, but on every person who could make a difference. Small acts of kindness, standing up for someone when they've been wronged, and teaching the next generation about empathy, these were all steps toward a more respectful world. As Eun-Woo continued to share his vision, more organizations began to adopt the principles of respect, kindness, and inclusivity. It wasn't just in hospitality or entertainment, businesses in all sectors were re-evaluating how they treated their employees. They began to realize that fostering respect wasn't just a moral choice, it was a business imperative. When people felt valued, they were more motivated, more engaged, and more loyal. One evening, after a particularly successful speech at a leadership summit, Eun-Woo received a message from Gina. "I just wanted to tell you how much your words have meant to me. I've been sharing our story with others, and I've seen how much it's impacted people. Thank you for giving me the strength to believe in myself. I'm not just a receptionist anymore, I'm part of a movement that's changing the world." Eun-Woo read the message with a deep sense of satisfaction. This was what he had hoped for, not just changing one moment in time, but creating a lasting change. The #RespectEveryone movement was no longer a campaign, it was a force for good in the world, and people like Gina were the living proof of its power. As the movement continued to grow, Eun-Woo's influence only expanded. He received invitations from governments and international organizations to help shape policies that promoted respect, equality, and fairness. He worked alongside advocates for workers' rights, civil rights, and women's rights, lending his voice to initiatives that sought to make the world a more just and equitable place. However, Eun-Woo always returned to the hotel whenever he could. It was there that the #RespectEveryone movement had started, and it was the place that reminded him of the importance of small, everyday acts of kindness. The hotel's staff had become his family, and it was with them that he saw the most profound change. The employees were more engaged, the guests were more satisfied, and the community was stronger. The hotel had become a model of what a respectful, inclusive environment could look like. And in those moments of reflection, Eun-Woo knew that the movement would continue long after the initial excitement had faded. As long as people continued to stand up for one another, as long as there were individuals who believed in the power of respect and kindness, the #RespectEveryone movement would live on. With each passing day, it became clearer, respect wasn't just an ideal. It was a way of life. The message of respect, fueled by Eun-Woo's unwavering commitment, was now woven into the fabric of many communities. The #RespectEveryone movement had transformed not only workplaces but entire cities, inspiring people to make everyday choices that valued the dignity of others. The quiet revolution that had started in the parking lot of a luxury hotel had turned into a worldwide call for empathy and respect, one act of kindness at a time. Gina, now a true leader in her field, continued to inspire those around her. She had taken on more responsibilities at the hotel, becoming a mentor to new employees and an advocate for positive change within the company. Her story of standing up for herself had resonated with so many, and she had become a key figure in implementing the hotel's new culture of respect. Her confidence was contagious, and it wasn't long before she became a guest speaker at various forums and conferences on workplace culture, teaching others the importance of empowerment and respect. Gina also began working with Eun-Woo on several projects aimed at promoting respectful interactions within communities. They collaborated on workshops that taught both employees and employers the importance of empathy and listening. They shared their personal stories and experiences, showing others how simple moments of kindness and respect could lead to monumental change. Meanwhile, Eun-Woo's reputation as an advocate for respect continued to grow. He was invited to speak at universities and corporate summits, spreading his message of dignity for all. He had become a global symbol of how to use one's influence for the betterment of society. Through his speeches, Eun-Woo urged people to lead by example and ensure that their actions reflected the values of respect, kindness, and fairness. At one particular event, Eun-Woo spoke to an audience of young professionals about the power of respect in shaping a successful career. Respect is not just about good manners, he told them. It's about creating environments where everyone feels valued, where we acknowledge the humanity in one another, regardless of status or position. Your career will only flourish when you treat others with respect, and that respect will eventually come back to you in ways you never expected. The impact of his words was immediately apparent. Many attendees approached him after the talk, sharing their stories of how they had once tolerated disrespect at work, only to realize that standing up for themselves and others had transformed their lives. These individuals had found their voice and were committed to spreading the message further. Across the globe, businesses began to integrate respect into their core values, and many organizations followed suit, offering training programs for employees and establishing policies that prioritized empathy and equality. The corporate world started to see the benefits of a more inclusive and respectful environment, not just in terms of employee satisfaction, but also in productivity and creativity. At the same time, Gina had her own breakthrough moment. She was invited to a prestigious leadership conference, where she was asked to share her experience with an international audience. Standing before hundreds of leaders from different industries, she spoke with a sense of pride and confidence that had once seemed unattainable. "Years ago, I never imagined that I would be standing here today," Gina began, her voice calm and steady. "I was just a receptionist at a hotel, silently tolerating mistreatment. But one day, when I least expected it, someone stood up for me. That moment changed everything. It taught me that I deserved respect. And now, I stand here with the knowledge that each of us deserves respect, no matter our position, our job, or our background." The room was silent as Gina spoke, and when she finished, the audience erupted in applause. Her words resonated with leaders, managers, and employees alike. She had turned her experience into a powerful lesson for others, showing them the transformative power of standing up for one another. As the #RespectEveryone movement continued to spread, Eun-Woo and Gina worked tirelessly to ensure that their message reached even more people. They collaborated with international organizations and community groups to create programs that would teach individuals about the importance of respect in their daily lives. Together, they reached out to schools, hospitals, and social services to offer workshops and support. Eun-Woo, ever humble, remained focused on the mission at hand, creating a world where respect was the standard, not the exception. He understood that the journey would not be easy and that the work would never truly be done. But he had seen the difference one small act of kindness could make, and he was determined to keep spreading that message far and wide. Gina, too, continued to rise, both within her career and in her personal life. She had become a beacon of empowerment for those who had once felt unseen or unappreciated. She had learned how to set boundaries, demand respect, and lead with empathy. And as her story continued to inspire others, she realized that the true power of the #RespectEveryone movement lay not in a single event or act, but in the continuous effort to ensure that respect was a part of every interaction, every community, and every life. As the movement reached its peak, Eun-Woo stood in front of a crowd at a final event, reflecting on how far they had come. "The world is not perfect," he said, "but we have the power to make it better. With every person who chooses to show respect, with every leader who chooses to treat their employees with dignity, with every individual who stands up for what's right, we are building a better world. This is just the beginning." The audience stood in applause, and Eun-Woo knew that the world had begun to change. The #RespectEveryone movement had created a future where respect was not just a choice, it was a way of life. As the #RespectEveryone movement spread across industries, it continued to evolve into a global force for good. Eun-Woo's unwavering commitment to kindness and respect had become an example for others, and the world began to see how small acts of kindness could lead to meaningful, long-lasting change. The movement had already transformed workplaces, schools, and communities. It had given people the tools they needed to stand up for themselves, to demand dignity and respect, and to offer the same to others. From major corporations to small businesses, from students to teachers, respect was becoming the foundation of interactions in every corner of the world. One day, Eun-Woo received a letter from an unexpected source, a young woman named Susie, who had been a frontline worker in a hospital during the global health crisis. She wrote about how, after hearing about the #RespectEveryone movement, she had found the courage to speak up when her colleagues were mistreated. Her story wasn't just about standing up for herself, but about advocating for every patient she cared for, making sure their voices were heard and that their dignity was respected. "Your message gave me the strength I needed," Susie wrote. "I didn't think I mattered in the grand scheme of things. I was just doing my job, and I felt invisible. But when I read about how you stood up for the valet in the parking lot, I realized that no one is invisible. We all matter." The letter deeply moved Eun-Woo. He had always believed that the true impact of the movement would be in the personal stories, the quiet acts of bravery that took place every day. Susie's words were a powerful reminder that respect wasn't just a lofty ideal, it was something tangible, something that could change lives in profound ways. Gina, too, had started her own initiative to help others. She partnered with local community groups to organize workshops on self-empowerment, where she shared her own story and taught others how to assert their worth and dignity. She continued to be a beacon of hope for those who had once felt overlooked or silenced. The feedback she received from participants was overwhelming, with many sharing how they had learned to stand up for themselves in their personal lives and work environments. In one of these workshops, a young woman named Minji approached Gina after the session, tears in her eyes. "I used to let people walk all over me," Minji said. "But now, I know that I don't have to accept disrespect. I can speak up for myself. You've inspired me to stop accepting less than I deserve." Gina smiled softly, knowing that she had made a real difference. "You are worthy of respect," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "And now, you have the power to demand it." Eun-Woo continued to meet with leaders from different sectors, spreading the message of respect everywhere he went. He knew that the true power of the #RespectEveryone movement wasn't in the big speeches or grand gestures, it was in the everyday decisions people made to treat each other with dignity. Whether it was a manager listening to an employee, a teacher encouraging a student, or a passerby offering a kind word to a stranger, the movement was growing, one action at a time. During one of his last speaking engagements for the year, Eun-Woo stood before an audience of thousands, his eyes scanning the crowd. "We've come so far," he began, his voice calm and steady. "But the work is far from over. The world is changing because of each of you. And it will continue to change as long as we keep living with respect for one another." The crowd responded with thunderous applause, a collective show of gratitude for the work they were all doing together. Eun-Woo knew that this moment, like the many others before it, was just the beginning. As he walked off the stage, Gina met him in the wings, a proud smile on her face. "You've changed so many lives," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "No," Eun-Woo replied, "we've changed lives together. Every person who has stood up for respect, every person who has chosen kindness, that's what's changing the world." And as they left the stage, Eun-Woo couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. The #RespectEveryone movement had started with a small act of standing up for someone, but it had grown into something much bigger, something that would continue to inspire change for years to come. As he walked into the future, Eun-Woo knew that the world was becoming a better place, one act of respect at a time. It was a journey that would never truly end, because respect, kindness, and dignity were values that would continue to evolve, shaping the future in ways no one could have predicted.